And there's a fight. Famous last words. Well, not necessarily last words, but last lap words of Ken Squirre at the 1979 Daytona 500. Ken Squirre was the first person to broadcast the Daytona 500 live from flag to flag on television in 1979 on February 18th. Ken Squirre died yesterday at the age of 88 years old. Ken Squirre was the voice of NASCAR on television from 1979 to 1997. In 1997, he handed over the reins to Mike Joy, who would call CBS's races for the next several years before moving on to Fox. Ken Squirre was the last person to speak on a NASCAR on CBS broadcast, and the first person, other than Chris Myers, to speak on a NASCAR on Fox broadcast. For the last several years, Ken Squirre has been battling with some health issues, and he was yesterday moved from the hospital to hospice care. However, after being moved to hospice care, where he was surrounded by friends and family, he passed away a little after 8 o'clock last night at Eastern Time. Dale Earnhardt Jr. talked about how NASCAR would not be the same if anybody other than Ken Squirre had called that 1979 Daytona 500 finish. If you remember, the 1979 Daytona 500 was during the midst of a major snowstorm that had the entire east coast of the United States, where most of the population is, under snow and not having anything to do with the Daytona 500 being the only sporting event on TV, and it being broadcast live flag to flag for the first time ever. Ken Squirre would go on to have one of the most famous careers. Some of the most famous calls of all time were from Ken Squirre. From 2015 to 2017 for Throwback Weekend and with the Southern 500, Ken Squirre was part of the broadcast team there. Multiple times for the Daytona 500 on Fox, Ken Squirre was brought on in order to actually raise the profile of the Daytona 500. It's likely that next year the Daytona 500 will begin with a tribute to Ken Squirre. 88 years old is quite a long time. He started his broadcasting career at 14. He actually owned a television station for a little while that he inherited from his father. And just, it is what it is. That unfortunately, with a sport that's 75 years old now, some of the voices of the early years are gone.